Good morning. Sun's coming up bright and early. So let's talk about some homesteading. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? I don't know. Where do you see yourself in 10? You living in the city, you living in the suburbs, you living in a small town, rural, you're living way out in the middle of nowhere. Where? Nowhere. What do you see yourself doing? And if you want to be homesteading because of what's going on in this crazy world, how do you know if you're doing it right? What's the right way to homestead? Are you going to be doing it right, or are you going to be doing it wrong? Who knows? Welcome to Goose Pond Hideout with Rob. So what's the right way to homestead? I was watching some stuff online and reading some messages and stuff, and there's this whole big discussion about homesteading the right way. And you know, if you're living in a city, living in a suburb, and you're deciding to make this transition because you want to be more self-sufficient, independent, growing your own food, because you know, hardly anybody today grows their own food or anything. I mean, when I was a kid, everybody had a garden, and today almost nobody does. Everybody's dependent on going to the grocery store. And just the other day, I ran into Rural King and I'm not knocking Rural King, but I ran into Rural King to buy chicken feed, and they didn't have any. They had no pallets out. The bin where the chicken feed is was completely empty. I went and asked if they had any in the back, and they're like, nope, hasn't been any on the truck for days. We don't know when we're gonna get it. And, you know, that just gets people to thinking, of course, you know, how you're gonna feed your chickens. But for people food, you know, if you've got a family and the grocery store doesn't have what you usually buy, what are you gonna do? But anyway, it's about this thought that there's a right way to homestead. And when you move from the city to the country, I'm of the opinion that you do what you want to do, I do what I want to do, the guy down the road does what he wants to do, and there's no right or wrong way to do it. And for example, just the other day I did a little video, but you know, we planted a couple more apple trees in our little orchard here. They probably won't have apples for years, but you know, that's what you do. You might not want apple trees. You may hate apples. You may think they're the most awfulest thing in the world. Then don't plant apple trees. You know, we're on the grid here on this homestead. And when we moved here 10, 11 years ago, we debated seriously about being off-grid. And we've been off-grid before. You know, I've had a pretty well-rounded life. I was born in a big city. I grew up in the suburbs. My mom's from Wisconsin, Illinois. My dad's from Georgia, so I lived in Georgia. And you know, in my lifetime, I've lived in a lot of states. I've lived in Illinois, Wisconsin. I've lived out in New Hampshire and Maine. I've lived down in Florida, in Georgia. You know, I've lived over in Louisiana, and of course we lived on the boat for 9 years. You know, I've lived in a lot of different places. I've lived in apartments and condos. I've lived in farmhouses and camps with no electricity, and outhouses for bathrooms. My one relative that I used to stay with when I was little in Wisconsin, we'd go up to visit, and I'd spend the summers, and she had a wood cook stove and a hand pump well for water in the kitchen. One of those old-fashioned wells. When you wanted water, you pumped the handle and filled up your bucket of water in the kitchen. And you went out to the outhouse to go to the bathroom and cooked on a wood cook stove. So, you know, I've kind of seen it all. And my thought is, you know, people, in today's world with social media, everybody likes to criticize everybody else. I saw this the other day where the guy said, he goes, when I have a question about something, I go to my favorite social media site and I post my question. He goes, but they won't answer. They'll ignore the question. I log into a different account and I post an absolutely ridiculous, totally wrong reply to my question. He goes, a dozen people will jump on and correct the incorrect reply. And it's kind of like grammar police in that, So that's how he gets his right answer, is he asks his question and then he, in a separate account, posts an incorrect answer, and then everybody jumps into the conversation to correct the incorrect answer, so he ends up getting the right answer. And that's the way people are with homesteading. If we're on the grid, as I mentioned, and I kind of sidetracked myself there, but we debated about going off the grid. And again, the water company is about 2 miles down the road. They trim all the trees along the road over there, so they're never hanging on the power lines. When the power goes out, their diesel generator kicks on at the water company, and they get a big alarm. And every time I call up the electric company, they're like, yep, we know the power's out over there. We're got a crew on the way to fix it. So it's like, why? And we use about $70 worth of electricity a month, and half of that is the bill. So I was kind of like, why put in a great big solar system? And we have a lot of trees on our property. It's really wooded. Our house roof is pitched east and west instead of north and south, so I can't put panels on the roof for that. So we just we're on the grid for now. We do have generators and things that we can use if we need to, but we don't have to be off the grid. So I hope people don't criticize me for, well, you're not really homesteading because you're hooked onto the grid. If you want meat chickens, great, have meat chickens. If you don't want to be butchering chickens and you're like, I don't know, that's not for me, then don't have meat chickens on your homestead. But don't criticize the people that, well, that's disgusting. How can you chop up a living animal and put it in the freezer? Well, everybody has a choice. If you want to have pigs for bacon, great. If you want to have a milk cow, I think milk cows are way too much work for what you get out of them. But, if you're a person that wants to have a dairy cow, go for it. Milk goats, meat goats, whatever. You just do what makes you happy. There's no, if you want to be on the grid, be on the grid. If you want to be off the grid, be off the grid. If you want to have meat chickens, have meat chickens. If you don't want to have meat chickens, don't have meat chickens. If you want to grow tomatoes and peppers in your garden, have at it. If you want to have your fruit trees, come on, baby, where's my apple? Then have your fruit trees. But you do you, I'll do me, and I might laugh at what you're doing quietly inside my own home, but I wouldn't do that to you. But, when you read about somebody, you may say, well, I don't agree with that, but you keep your mouth shut. You don't point out somebody else's differences, because it's not like it's right or wrong. It's a choice. You make your choices, I'll make my choices. We'll live on our homestead, what makes us happy. You live on your homestead, what makes you happy. That's just the circle of life. And because there's always got to be somebody that wants to, mess with you. This is just a little bit off topic, but Saturday morning I got up, turned my phone on. I shut my phone off when I go to bed at night. It's out in the dining room on the charger, and I literally power it down. I plug my phone into the charger on the wall, power it down, and it's sitting on the dining room table, and then I go to bed. Get up in the morning, make the pot of coffee, pick up my phone and turn it on. I got an alert that my Amazon order payment was denied with my bank card. I'm like, well, that's kind of weird. Maybe it's just a fluke. So I re-enter it. And then a little while later, I'm like, well, I'm going to go pay the car insurance because it's due today, Monday. And so on Saturday, I go to my car insurance online, click everything to make the payment, payment denied. I'm like, well, what the heck is up with that? And I looked at my messages, and sure enough, a couple days ago, I had a fraud alert message. So I'm guessing that my bank has froze my card for safety measures. But, you know, I didn't know about it till Saturday morning at 6:30 in the morning. So I call up the 800 number on my card. The offices are closed now. You know, please call back Monday morning when we reopen. I'm like, well, great. So now, you know, how do you not rely on the system? You got to have a bank card to make payments for things. And now my card's frozen. So in effect, I've got no money. You know, I mean, I have a wallet with, you know, $20, $40 in it, but you know, everything is digital these days. And you know, I can't pay my car insurance. I can't pay Amazon with cash, you know, because they're like companies that are way out there in Never Land. And you know, I can pay for gas for the car or something like that with cash. But we just, you know, there's no getting away from the society system. You can't disappear off grid. I've complained about property taxes and car insurance and all that before. But that's just, you know, you've got to deal with those things even when you transition to homesteading. And so but the main point there is there's no doing it wrong, there's no doing it right. You just go slow, don't jump in too fast, and have your chickens, have your goats, have your dairy cows, have your pigs, whatever you want, but be happy with the way that you're doing it, and never ever criticize somebody else's choices just because they're doing it different than you. Right? Freedom!